The Galactic Council chamber was dark, almost silent. Only the faint blue glow from the tall crystal windows lit the room. Shadows stretched across the floor, reaching toward the center platform where the speakers stood. Hundreds of alien leaders sat in their high seats, arranged in a perfect circle. They represented dozens of worlds, tall reptilian figures with cold yellow eyes, floating jelly-like beings in containment tanks, armored insectoids clicking their mandibles in impatience. In the center of the room stood General Zaire Talok, a veteran of countless wars. A name whispered in fear by entire star systems. He was a broad-shouldered creature from the Creel Dominion, his thick skin covered in deep scars, each one a memory of battle. His right arm was not flesh anymore. It had been replaced with an old war-forged cybernetic limb, still dented from heavy impacts. Talok had fought pirates, warlords, and even rogue machine fleets. He had conquered planets and burned fortresses. He had never shown fear until now. His large, black eyes scanned the room. The other council members watched him with curiosity, some with boredom. To them, this was just another military briefing. Talok leaned toward the voice amplifiers. His voice was deep, gravelly, and slow. "If you value your worlds," he paused. The echo rolled around the chamber. "Never fight humans." A low ripple of laughter moved through the chamber. The Varish speaker, a tall and elegant being, made of shimmering light, tilted its head. "Humans? You mean the young species from the Sol system?" Several others chuckled openly. A four-eyed captain from the Zkar Union leaned back and smirked. "General, is this a joke? The humans are barely 2 centuries into space travel. They have no advanced fleets, no genetic enhancements, no planetary shields." Another voice called out from the gallery, a deep-voiced reptilian warlord. "They are fragile mammals, soft skin, weak bones. They cannot survive without their machines. If you crush their ships, you crush their will." The chamber filled with small bursts of laughter again, but Talok did not laugh. He did not even smile. His eyes narrowed and his cybernetic hand clenched slowly, the metal fingers making a faint grinding sound. "You think they are weak," he said softly. "So did I." The laughter stopped. Something in his tone, low, tense, made even the most arrogant council members lean forward slightly. "I fought them once," Talok continued. "On a planet called Carthus Prime, my fleet was ordered to take the world. It was a human colony, small, isolated, poorly defended. At least that was what our scouts reported." His gaze drifted to the floor, as if he could still see that planet under his boots. "We thought it would be over in days. We brought more ships than they had buildings. We had better weapons, better armor, better everything." He looked up slowly. "And yet, I stand here before you to say this. If war comes, pray that humans are not your enemy." Around the chamber, some alien leaders shifted uncomfortably. Others still smirked, but their eyes were more cautious now. The council archivist, an ancient machine intelligence, floated closer. "General Talok," it said, its voice cold and mechanical. "Explain this warning. Was your defeat due to tactical error? Poor leadership?" Talok shook his head. "It was not poor leadership. It was something else. Something I did not understand at the time." He took a slow step forward. The dim lights caught the deep scar running from his left cheek down across his neck. "We landed on Carthus Prime in the middle of their warm season. The air was heavy, the forests thick. My forces, 2 full legions, landed without resistance. The humans sent a small envoy to speak with us. They offered peace, trade, and cooperation. They wanted to avoid bloodshed." The Zico captain scoffed. "So they feared you." Talok's gaze snapped to him. "No, that was not fear. It was restraint. They wanted to avoid war, not because they were weak, but because they understood what war costs." He let the Words hang in the air for a moment. My second-in-command laughed at their offer and sent them away. We began our march to the colony city. His voice dropped lower, slower. We expected them to flee. Instead, they prepared. The first day was easy. Talok's forces broke through the human perimeter defenses in hours. Their energy cannons destroyed the old human gun turrets. The alien walkers crushed through barricades made of metal scraps. By nightfall, the alien soldiers celebrated. They thought victory was already theirs. Talok looked up at the glowing ceiling of the chamber as if he were looking at stars long gone. That night, the first of my soldiers disappeared. The insectoid ambassador from Vayer clicked its mandibles. Disappeared? How? Talok's voice deepened, and for the first time, a shadow of fear crept into it. They were on patrol in the forest near the human city. 4 of them. They never came back. We searched for hours, found nothing. No weapons, no armor, no blood. Some members of the council shifted in their seats. Disappearances in war were not uncommon, but something about his tone made it sound different. The next morning, Talok continued, we found traps in the woods. Primitive, made of rope and metal scraps, but they worked. One of my scouts was nearly torn in half by a swinging log with sharpened spikes. He paused, staring into the distance. We destroyed every trap we found, but by nightfall, new ones had appeared. He stepped closer to the council's inner circle. Understand this. Humans are not the most advanced species, but they adapt faster than any army I have faced. Every trap we dismantled, they rebuilt. Stronger, every weakness they showed us, they closed within a day. The Varish speaker's light form flickered slightly. General, surely you exaggerate. No species can improve that quickly. Talok gave a thin, humorless smile. So I thought, until the second night fell, the chamber grew quieter. Even those who had mocked him earlier now seemed more attentive. Talok's voice grew heavier. We had set up camp in the ruins of their outer settlement. My troops were tired but confident. We had armored patrols, aerial drones, watchtowers. No one could get close without being seen. He glanced down at his cybernetic arm and flexed. The fingers slowly, and yet they came. The floating archivist leaned forward. Who came? Talok's voice dropped to a whisper. Humans. He began to pace slowly around the central circle. They did not attack in daylight. They waited for the forest to swallow the light, for the night to hide them. They moved silently, no ships, no heavy weapons. They came on foot, crawling through mud and underbrush. My sentries didn't hear them until it was too late. The alien leaders listened in uneasy silence as he spoke. They cut power to our searchlights. They jammed our comms. They slipped into our camp and took what they needed, weapons, food, ammunition, and vanished into the dark. His voice hardened. We chased them. We never caught them. Talok stopped speaking for a moment. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the mechanical hum of the air filters seemed distant now. Finally, he looked up, and his black eyes seemed to stare into every soul in the room. We thought they were weak, until the first night fell, and then he was silent. The chamber stayed silent after General Zaire, Talok's last words. His deep voice echoed in the minds of every alien present. We thought they were weak, until the first night fell. For a long moment, no one dared to speak. The laughter that had filled the room earlier was gone. The council archivist's mechanical eyes glowed softly. Continue, General. What happened after that night? Talok's cybernetic fingers curled into a fist, and the faint grinding sound of metal on metal broke the silence. He looked down at the council floor, but his eyes were far away, seeing not the chamber, but the planet Carthus Prime. The day after the first night morning came with a heavy fog. The alien camp was quiet, too quiet. The usual sounds of soldiers moving, preparing equipment, and speaking in sharp military tones were replaced by whispers and low voices. Talok walked through the camp slowly, his boots crunching over the wet soil. He saw soldiers gathered around empty beds, soldiers who had been there the night before, but were now gone. Some bunks were untouched, blankets neatly folded. Others were a mess, signs of struggle, a dropped weapon, a blood trail leading into the forest. And then nothing. One of his lieutenants, a sharp-faced officer named Kreth, walked up quickly. "General, 19 soldiers missing, no trace, and 3 more found dead in the perimeter zone, throats cut." No alarms were triggered. Talok's eyes narrowed. "Our sensors?" Kreth shook his head. "Offline for 40 minutes during the night. We checked the systems. Someone cut the main line here." He handed Talok a small datapad showing a map of the camp. The cut point was deep inside their own perimeter. Talok stared at it. That meant the humans had entered the camp without being seen, taken down there. Security, killed, stolen, and then slipped away before the soldiers even realized it. The forest by midday. Talok had ordered multiple scouting parties to sweep the forests. The air in those woods was thick and damp. Large, twisted trees rose high above, their branches weaving together like a dark ceiling. Shadows hid in every corner. The alien patrols moved carefully, their weapons ready. But the humans had been there first. The scouts found more traps. Not just crude swinging logs now, but pits lined with sharpened stakes, tripwires connected to explosives, and false trails designed to lure soldiers into kill zones. Every step forward was dangerous. In one sector, a patrol found one of the missing soldiers tied to a tree, alive but unconscious. When they cut him free, he woke screaming and clawing at his rescuers, yelling about eyes in the dark and faces painted with blood. The soldier had to be sedated before he could be moved. The second Nightalok knew the humans would come again. He doubled the guards, repaired the sensors, and placed drones in the trees. Searchlights were kept on all night. The camp was ready, or so they thought. The second night fell quickly, the fog from the day still clinging to the ground. Soldiers stood in pairs at every post, their eyes scanning the darkness. Hours passed. No movement. Some began to think the humans had retreated. Then a loud bang. One of the watchtowers erupted in flames. Before the soldiers could react, a second explosion tore through the northern wall of the camp. Smoke filled the air. Shadows moved in the confusion. The humans didn't attack in force. They didn't need to. They slipped in small teams, hit a target, and vanished. They moved like they had been born in those forests. One alien squad chased a group of humans into the trees and never returned. Another squad fired into the dark, thinking they saw movement, only to find they had destroyed their own supply crates, captured near the center of camp. Talok himself faced his first human in combat. He heard movement behind one of the storage tents and went to investigate. A shadow darted past him. He swung his plasma rifle around, but it was too late. A human soldier leaped from the shadows, knocking the weapon aside. They fought hand-to-hand in the mud, Talok's massive cybernetic arm against the human's speed and precision. The human wasn't stronger, but he was relentless. Every time Talok thought he had an opening, the human slipped free, striking again and again. Finally, Talok managed to slam the soldier against a crate, knocking him unconscious. When the human was brought to the command tent, Talok saw his face. Clearly young, barely more than a boy. His uniform was torn, his skin smeared with mud and dark paint. Talok asked him why they kept attacking, why they didn't retreat. The human's voice was calm, steady. "We don't stop. We don't run, we adapt." Then he smiled, not a friendly smile, but one filled with quiet certainty, and added, "And we're just getting started." The morning after, by the next sunrise, Talok's army was smaller. Dozens more were missing. The soldiers were restless. Some refused to patrol the forest at night. Rumors spread quickly that the humans could appear anywhere, that they could vanish like ghosts, that they never slept. Talok didn't believe in ghosts. But he knew this. Every hour they stayed on Carthus Prime, the humans became more dangerous. In his war logs, he wrote one line: "We are not hunting them. They are hunting us." Back in the council chamber, Talok stopped speaking for a moment, letting the image sink into the minds of the council members. The Varish speaker's glowing form dimmed slightly. "You are saying the humans fought you with no fleet, no heavy weapons, and still made you bleed?" Talok nodded slowly. "We had every advantage, but they took the one thing we didn't guard, our certainty, and they turned it against us." The insectoid ambassador leaned forward. "And this was only the beginning?" Talok's dark eyes met his. Yes, the real war hadn't even started. He looked around the chamber, scanning every face. "Do you understand now why I said what I said? Why I tell you never fight?" "Humans?" Some of the council members shifted in discomfort. Others still looked doubtful, but less certain than before. The archivist's mechanical voice broke the silence. "Tell us, General. What happened after that?" Talok's mouth set in a hard line. "After that came the turning point. The moment I knew we were in trouble." He stepped back from the center circle, his voice lowering until the council had to lean in to hear. "The third night, they came for me, and the chamber went still again." The council chamber was silent again. Every alien eye was fixed on General Zaire Talok. His voice had grown heavier, slower, as if each word carried the weight of a memory he wished he could forget. The third night begins. Talok's army had been on Carthus Prime for less than a week, but it felt like months. They were losing soldiers every night, not to big battles, but to shadows, traps, and silent kills. By the third night, fear had settled into the camp like a sickness. Soldiers whispered instead of shouting. Even the most aggressive fighters kept glancing over their shoulders. Talok ordered extra security around his command tent. 2 full squads, armed and alert. Searchlights stayed on, drones patrolled the perimeter, and every weapon was loaded and ready. He didn't plan to sleep that night. The first sign it began with the wind. Or at least, what they thought was the wind. A faint sound drifted through the trees, soft broken whispers in a language most of the soldiers didn't understand. Some thought it was human speech. Others thought it was a trick of the forest. Then came the thud. One of the perimeter guards fell from his watchtower, landing face first in the mud. His throat was cut. No one had seen the attacker. The distraction. Loud explosion lit up the southern side of the camp. Soldiers ran toward it, shouting orders. Smoke filled the air, alarms blared, and the searchlights swung wildly. Talok stayed where he was, knowing the humans preferred chaos. He was right. While the soldiers chased shadows at the south wall, another group of humans slipped in from the north. They moved fast, silent, crouched low. Faces painted in dark colors, eyes sharp and focused. They didn't fire randomly. They hit specific targets: ammo crates, comm towers, power generators. Every strike weakened the aliens' defenses. The hunt for the General. Talok realized too late that he was their real target. A sharp crack sounded behind his tent. His guards turned, and 3 humans burst from the shadows. They weren't carrying heavy weapons, only short blades and compact rifles. The first guard fell instantly, a blade across his throat. The second tried to fire, but his weapon jammed. Sabotaged earlier, perhaps. Talok grabbed his own plasma rifle and fired, forcing the attackers to scatter. 2 disappeared into the dark, but 1 stayed, moving toward him with deliberate steps. This human was taller than most, his face hidden under a dark visor. He didn't shout, didn't speak. He just advanced, dodging each of Talok's shots with quick, precise movements. Close combat. The fight was brutal. Talok swung his cybernetic arm, trying to crush the human's ribs, but the soldier ducked low, stabbing upward toward the joint in the metal plating. Sparks flew. Talok used his size to push forward, forcing the human back. The ground between them turned to mud under their boots. Finally, with a heavy swing, Talok knocked the human to the ground. He stepped forward, ready to finish it, but the soldier just stared up at him, breathing hard. Then, to Talok's confusion, he smiled. A tiny red light blinked on the human's chest armor. Talok's eyes widened. A small explosive. The explosion, the blast, was small but powerful. It didn't kill Talok, but it threw him back into the side of his tent, tearing the structure apart. His cybernetic arm sparked violently, half its systems failing. By the time he stood again, the human was gone. So were the other attackers, but the message was clear. They could have killed him that night if they wanted. Instead, they wanted him to know he was never safe. The shift in the war after that night, everything changed. The humans stopped only harassing his forces. They started pushing back. Alien patrols vanished entirely. Supply lines were hit daily. Ambushes became common, and the humans always escaped before reinforcements could arrive. Talok began to notice something else. The humans were using alien weapons now. Not clumsily, but with skill. They learned quickly, adapting the tech for their own use. His soldiers grew restless. Some even refused to leave the camp without heavy escort. The humans had turned the hunters into the hunted. The human spirit. One day, Talok captured another human fighter. This one was injured, his leg bleeding badly. Talok expected the man to be desperate, afraid. Instead, the human sat straight, meeting the general's eyes without fear. "Why do you fight like this?" Talok asked. "Because you came here," the human replied simply. "You could surrender. Save your lives," Talok said. The man chuckled softly. "We'd rather die standing than live on our knees." Those words stayed with Talok long after the prisoner was taken away. In the council chamber, back in the present, Talok's deep voice echoed through the silent chamber. "That was the moment I knew we were not dealing with a normal enemy. They didn't just fight to win battles. They fought to break us, to make us fear them, and it worked." The insectoid ambassador shifted uncomfortably. "So you retreated?" Talok shook his head slowly. "No, we prepared for one final push. We thought we could crush them with overwhelming force. But we were wrong. The worst was still coming." He paused, letting the tension hang in the air, and it began. On the fourth night, the council chamber was so quiet that the faint hum of the lights above seemed louder than usual. General Zaire Talok's black eyes scanned the circle of alien leaders, each one waiting for the next part of his story. His voice was low but steady. As he continued, "The third night had shown me their intent. The humans had marked me as a target, not just my army. They could have killed me then. But they didn't. They wanted me alive, watching, knowing they could reach me any time they chose." He let the words hang for a moment before speaking again. "And then came the fourth night. The night they stopped defending and started hunting us." By the fourth night on Carthus Prime, Talok's camp was a fortress. He had ordered heavy barricades built around the perimeter, placed automated turrets at every entry point, and doubled the number of drones patrolling the air and forest edges. Soldiers worked without rest, repairing damage from the previous days, stacking ammunition, and checking weapons over and over. Yet no matter how many preparations they made, the fear remained. It was in the way soldiers avoided the shadows after dusk. It was in the way they flinched at sudden noises. Even the strongest among them walked with tense shoulders, their hands always near their weapons. That evening, a strange calm settled over the camp. The forest beyond the walls was quiet, almost too quiet. No movement, no distant animal sounds, no wind in the leaves. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath. Talok stood on the watch platform, his cybernetic arm resting on the railing as he scanned the tree line. His second-in-command, Kreth, stood beside him. "Maybe they're finally out of tricks," Kreth said, trying to sound confident. Talak didn't respond. He knew better. The humans had not fought so hard to suddenly give up. No, they were planning something. It began with the turrets. At exactly the same time, 3 of the automated guns along the western wall went offline. The control system showed no damage, no signs of sabotage. They had simply shut down. A minute later, 2 drones dropped from the sky, their systems fried by some kind of electromagnetic pulse. Kreth barked orders to get replacements in the air, but the moment the first new drone lifted off, it exploded mid-flight. Talok's teeth clenched. This was no random malfunction. The humans were cutting out his eyes and ears. Then came the attack. But not where he expected. A loud explosion ripped through the southern gate, sending flames into the night sky. Dozens of soldiers rushed there, thinking it was the main assault. But Talak saw the pattern immediately. "Pull them back!" He shouted, but it was too late. While his forces were busy at the south, the humans hit the north and east walls at the same time. Small, fast-moving teams breached the defenses, hitting hard and vanishing just as quickly. Unlike the earlier nights, the humans didn't just steal supplies this time. They destroyed them. Ammunition crates went up in flames. Fuel tanks were blown apart. Food stores were scattered and burned. Every explosion, every strike was deliberate, aimed at crippling the aliens' ability to fight long-term. Talak realized something terrifying. The humans were no longer trying to survive. They were trying to win. In the chaos, Talak moved through the camp, rallying his soldiers, ordering defensive lines to hold the inner perimeter. But the humans were everywhere. They moved through the darkness like predators, using the flames and smoke to vanish before anyone could lock onto them. More alien soldiers fell, not from mass bombardment, but from precision strikes. A single shot here, a blade in the dark there, a sudden tripwire that sent an entire squad into an ambush. Then came the sound. It began faint, distant, the sound of screaming. Not the screams of his soldiers, but the recorded cries of alien voices, played through loudspeakers hidden in the forest. The soldiers froze, their eyes darting toward the noise. Some swore they recognized the voices, comrades they had lost in previous nights. The sound grew louder, overlapping, echoing from every direction until it was impossible to tell where it came from. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. Soldiers broke formation, some running toward the noise, others retreating toward the center of camp in panic. Talak himself nearly fell victim to the distraction when the humans made their boldest move yet. They stormed the command platform. A group of 5 emerged from the smoke, firing short bursts to suppress the guards before closing in with blades. Talak fought them himself, his cybernetic arm smashing one aside, his plasma rifle burning another to the ground. But the humans fought with a ferocity unlike anything he had faced before. Even injured, they pressed forward. Even when outnumbered, they refused to retreat. It was as if each one had already accepted they might die that night and didn't care, so long as they took their enemies with them. By the time the humans pulled back, the camp was in ruins. The western wall was gone, the northern perimeter shredded. Over a third of the supplies were destroyed. Casualties were higher than in the first 3 nights combined. And most chilling of all, the humans had taken their dead with them. Every body, every piece of evidence, gone. The morning after, the alien camp felt hollow. Soldiers moved like shadows of themselves, exhausted and shaken. The once proud banners of the Creel Dominion hung torn and burnt. Talak walked among his troops, his mind heavy with the truth he could no longer ignore. They were losing not just the battle, but the war. The humans had turned the tide. They were dictating when and where the fighting happened. And worse, they were doing it with fewer numbers, weaker weapons, and no fleet overhead. In the council chamber, Talok's deep voice carried the weight of that night's memory. "They used our strength against us," he said. They let us think we had control, then tore it away piece by piece. Every trap we set, they learned to avoid. Every weapon we carried, they learned to use. They were not fighting as soldiers. They were fighting as survivors, and survivors will do anything to live another day. He looked around the circle of alien leaders, many of whom now sat in uneasy silence. You call them primitive. You call them fragile, but I tell you, fragility is a lie. The humans do not break. They bend, they adapt, and then they come back harder. One of the insectoid delegates clicked its mandibles nervously. And this counterattack, it was the end? Talok shook his head slowly, his scarred face hardening. No, it was only the beginning. That night was the moment they proved. They could win. What came after? He paused, his eyes narrowing as if staring at something only he could see. Was their last stand, and it was worse than anything before. He stepped back from the center platform, his cybernetic fingers tightening into a fist. You wanted to know why I warn you never to face humans in war. If you still doubt me, then listen to what happened next. Listen to the night we tried to crush them once and for all. And failed. The chamber was silent again, the air heavy with anticipation as the general prepared to tell the story of the battle that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The chamber's air felt heavier now, as if the weight of Talok's words had pushed the oxygen out. No one moved, no one spoke. All eyes stayed fixed on the scarred Creel general, whose deep voice had been dragging them deeper and deeper into the dark heart of Carthus Prime. His cybernetic hand rested on the platform, the faint hum of its damaged servos the only sound before he continued. The fourth night broke my army's spirit. Talok began, but my commanders, they still believed in numbers. They still thought overwhelming force could crush the humans once and for all. So we planned one last assault, an attack so large, so relentless, that nothing could survive it. This was to be the end of the resistance. Our victory would be total. The plan was simple in theory. Surround the human colony. Push in from all sides at once. Burn every building. Leave no place for them to hide. Talok's fleet in orbit would launch precision strikes on key escape routes, sealing the humans inside their own settlement. Then the ground forces would sweep through like a tide, leaving nothing behind but ashes. It was to be quick, brutal, and final. The day before the attack, Talok walked the lines. His soldiers, tired, thin from days of little rest, still stood tall when they saw him, but he could see the fear in their eyes. No matter how strong their armor, no matter how sharp their weapons, they knew the humans had already beaten them in the shadows. Now they would face them in the open. When the morning of the assault came, the skies over Carthus Prime were thick with smoke. The sun was little more than a pale disk behind the haze. Talok's forces began their advance. Tanks rolled forward over cracked roads. Walkers the size of buildings crushed through the outer forests, their heavy legs snapping trees like twigs. Gunships hovered low, scanning for movement. At first, there was nothing. No gunfire, no shouts. Just the creak of metal and the thud of boots. Talok's forces pushed deeper toward the colony, and for a moment he thought maybe the humans had finally fled. Then the first trap went off. A deep rumble shook the ground as a buried explosive tore open the lead column of tanks. The road behind them collapsed into a hidden trench lined with sharpened steel. Soldiers fell screaming into the pit as gunfire erupted from both sides of the path. The humans had been waiting. They did not fight from the center of the colony. They attacked from every angle at once. Snipers hidden in half-ruined buildings picked off officers with single shots. Grenades rained down from rooftops. Fires spread fast, turning the battlefield into a maze of smoke and flame. Talok roared orders, pushing his forces forward, but the humans gave no ground easily. Every street became a kill zone. Every corner hid another ambush. And all the while, The humans kept moving, never staying in one place long enough to be pinned down. The alien walkers, their pride and terror machines, were brought down not by heavy weapons, but by clever traps, fuel lines cut by hidden saboteurs, legs tangled by steel cables, vision systems blinded by bursts of paint and debris. Talok himself pushed toward the center, leading the charge. His cybernetic arms smashed through barricades, his plasma rifle cutting down defenders. But for every human that fell, two more seemed to rise from the smoke, firing with calm precision. He finally reached the colony square, or what was left of it. The open space was filled with smoke and bodies. In the center stood a small group of human fighters, surrounded by makeshift barricades of metal sheets, rubble, and burning debris. Behind them, civilians huddled in fear, but not in panic. Even the civilians stared back at Talok's forces with a cold defiance. That was when the human leader stepped forward. She was small compared to the armored aliens, her uniform scorched and torn, her face streaked with ash. But her eyes burned with the same fire Talok had seen in every soldier on that cursed planet. "You can take this ground," she shouted across the chaos, "but you will never take us." Her words were swallowed by the roar of gunfire as the last stand began in full. The humans fought like the ground beneath their feet was alive, like the air around them was the only thing keeping them breathing. They had no escape plan, no backup waiting in orbit. But they fought anyway, trading blood for every meter the aliens gained. Talok's forces pushed hard, closing the distance. He could see the barricades falling, the human fighters dwindling in number, yet still, they did not break. Even as ammunition ran low, they used captured alien weapons. Even as their wounded screamed in pain, they fought on, covering each other, dragging the injured out of the line of fire. One alien commander shouted in frustration, "Why won't they just fall?" Talok had no answer. It was then that the weather turned. Dark clouds rolled in, heavy rain pouring down, mixing with the smoke and mud. The humans used it instantly, their movements hidden, their traps harder to spot. Alien weapons misfired in the downpour, sensors flickered with interference, while the humans seemed almost to grow stronger in the storm. When the orbital strikes came, they should have crushed the remaining defenders. But the humans had anticipated them. The moment the first shot lit up the ground, they moved, disappearing into tunnels beneath the colony. The bombardment tore apart empty streets while the defenders reappeared behind alien lines, cutting off retreat paths and trapping entire squads in crossfire. By the time night fell, the battle had become a nightmare. Fires burned in every direction. The screams of the wounded mixed with the distant echoes of human war cries. Talok's commanders begged for permission to pull back, but he refused, not out of pride, but because he knew retreat meant being hunted in the dark again. The fighting went on for hours. It was no longer a clean military operation. It was survival on both sides. But the humans had something Talok's army did not: unity. He saw it in the way they moved, the way they protected each other. Not one was left behind. Even in the middle of chaos, they carried their injured away from danger. By dawn, the Creel Dominion forces still held parts of the colony, but at a terrible cost. Nearly half the invasion force was gone. Supplies were almost gone. Morale was shattered beyond repair. And though they had technically taken the ground, they had not broken the humans. In the council chamber, Talok's voice dropped to a low, heavy tone. "That was the last time we tried to take Carthus Prime by force. We left soon after, not because we could not destroy the colony, but because we understood the truth. Even if we burned every building, even if we killed every soldier, the humans would still fight us. They would fight us until the stars themselves went dark." He looked around at the silent assembly of alien leaders. That was their last stand. And they won it. Not by destroying us outright, but by showing us we could never truly defeat them. Talok's gaze lingered on each face, his final words cutting through the still air. Never face humans in war. If you corner them, if you try to crush them, you will only see what they are truly capable of, and you will not survive it. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was utterly silent. The walls of polished stone and metal reflected the dim blue light of the central dais, where General Zir Talok stood, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the floor. His story had carried them through the smoke and fire of Carthus Prime, through the long nights where his soldiers vanished into the dark, through the endless echoes of human defiance. Now his words hung in the air like the final note of a funeral song that no one dared to interrupt. The laughter and mocking smiles that had greeted his first warning were gone. In their place were furrowed brows, pale faces, and eyes that refused to meet his. Even those species known for their boldness, for their unwillingness to show fear, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Talok's gaze moved slowly across the assembly. "I tell you these things," he said, his voice low but firm, "not to entertain you, but to save you." His cybernetic hand gripped the edge of the podium, the metal groaning under the pressure. "We Creel are a warrior race. We have conquered worlds. We have faced every enemy the galaxy could throw at us. But nothing has been like the humans." He turned his head slightly, the light catching the deep scar across his left eye. "They are not the strongest. They are not the fastest. They are not the most advanced. Yet, when cornered, they become something else entirely. Something the galaxy is not ready for." A representative from the Jurian Accord, a tall serpent-like being, finally spoke, his voice trembling despite his attempt at authority. You exaggerate, General. Surely no race can fight without fear. Surely no race can stand against overwhelming force forever." Talok's eyes narrowed. "You think I exaggerate?" His voice rose, but it was not a shout. It was the controlled fury of a man who had seen too much death. "Then tell me this. Why did my fleet leave Carthus Prime alive? Why did we not return to finish the humans? Do you think we lacked weapons? We could have glassed the entire planet from orbit in a day. But we did not. Do you know why?" The chamber remained silent, because even if we destroyed them there, they would not be gone. Their kind would remember. They would hunt us, not for years, not for decades, for centuries. And they would not stop until our worlds were nothing but dust. A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. Talok took a step forward, the floor beneath, his armored boots giving a faint metallic thud. "You believe war is about who has the bigger fleet, about who can throw the most soldiers into the fight. But humans, they do not fight wars like we do. For them, war is not about honor or pride, or territory. For them, war is survival. And survival makes them dangerous beyond measure." He paused, letting the words sink in. "When we fight other races, we win by breaking their will. Destroy their cities, shatter their armies, and the war is over. But with humans, every loss makes them stronger. Every defeat makes them learn. And every death makes them fight harder." From the far end of the chamber, a small, pale-skinned alien from the merchant guilds spoke up hesitantly. "But they are few in number. The humans only joined the galactic stage recently. Surely they cannot challenge the great powers of the galaxy." Talok's face hardened, and his deep voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You still do not understand. Numbers do not matter. Time does not matter. They are patient. They are stubborn. You can kill 100 of them, and one will remain. And that one will keep fighting." He turned his gaze upward, as if looking through the walls and the ceiling, beyond the stars. "Do you know the stories humans tell themselves? Stories from their own history? Entire cities reduced to rubble, yet the survivors rebuilt. Armies outnumbered 100 to 1, yet they fought until the enemy fled. They have faced extinction more times than any of you can imagine, and every time they came back, the room felt colder now." The delegates shifted, whispering softly to one another, though no one dared speak loud enough to challenge him again. Talak stepped back from the podium, his voice now quiet but cutting through the air with absolute clarity. If you face them in war, you will not be fighting their ships or their soldiers. You will be fighting their will. And that cannot be destroyed. He looked at the assembled leaders one last time, his gaze lingering on those who still seemed unsure. So hear me now. If war comes, pray they are your allies. If they are your enemy, there is no place in this galaxy you can hide. For a long moment, no one moved. The chamber seemed frozen in that silence, each delegate lost in their own thoughts. And then, faint at first but growing, a distant sound echoed through the great hall. It was the low, steady hum of engines, not the quick pulse of courier ships or the deep thrum of freighters. This was something heavier, larger. One of the council aides rushed to the side chamber, returning moments later with a pale face. "There is a fleet approaching," he whispered, though his voice carried in the unnatural quiet. "They have not sent identification codes." The council leader, a tall figure of crystalline form, turned to the aide. "Whose fleet?" The aide swallowed hard. "Human." A murmur rolled through the delegates like a wave, but Talak did not move. He simply closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if hearing a truth confirmed. When he opened them again, his voice was calm. "Do not mistake their silence for weakness. If they are here, it is for a reason." Through the vast windows of the council chamber, the dark shapes began to appear. Angular ships with no ornament, no wasted space, only purpose. They moved slowly, in perfect formation, their black hulls swallowing the starlight. There was no flourish, no announcement. The humans had arrived the way they fought, steady, deliberate, inevitable. No weapons fired. No demands were made. The fleet simply hung there, silent and watching, as if weighing the council in its gaze. In that moment, every leader in the chamber understood what Talak had been trying to tell them. The humans did not need to roar to be feared. They did not need to show their weapons to remind the galaxy of what they could do. Their presence alone was enough. Talak turned from the window, his armor glinting faintly in the light of the human fleet. "Now you understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You do not win against them. You survive if they allow it." And with that, the Creel general stepped down from the dais, his heavy steps echoing in the silence, leaving the council to face the truth on their own.